we're going to jump straight into it. Maybe a quick intro from everyone. Yeah, I mean, it's staking rewards, so we aggregate staking data. Yeah.
I'm a C, managing partner at Dragonfly.
I'm Freddie, Ethereum ecosystem leader at Block Demon.
I'm Terrence, I am the maintainer of Prism, consensus layer dev. I am the one to blame for the tiny game.
I'm Max, I'm the head of research at Specialized Presence Group, which is part of Consensus.
Cool. So let's jump straight into it. So I'm going to start off with the statement. So according to timing.pix, shout out to whoever built that website, but the average earnings are currently 17.56% higher for those who are playing timing games than for those who are not, right? So that's quite a big incentive. Now, I'm going to ask Freddie to kick it off. What are timing games and why is it important?
Right. So people that play timing games, they delay the get header message, and I think I did a great intro just before here. So they're delaying getting the info from the relays in order to get higher MEV. That's a timing game basically.
Cool. And why should people take part in it?
I'm not sure that we should all take part in it, actually, but there's certainly a lot of people that are, and it's to optimize the APR for the stakers. That's why people do it. Whether that's the right choice or not, I don't know. There's definitely downsides to it as well. We should discuss it.
Yeah, we'll jump into that. Let's maybe discuss those downsides. Like, is it a major thing if people are missing the slots? And what's the effect on the network? Why is there pushback against this? What do you guys think?
I think the average cost for missing a slot, if you look in terms of like the burner, is about $1,000 a slot. And the reason that these two ideas are connected is the longer you delay, the longer it takes the block to propagate, and the probability that the block arrives after the attestation deadline, like it's reorged, is higher. And kind of in equilibrium, if everybody would play these time games, everybody delays, say, 2 seconds. Now, everybody's slot is exactly the same length as it was without this, except we're pushing up against the attestation deadline. So everybody's the same slot length, same rewards, and we just have more missed slots and more reorgs on the network. And that's why it's not a great thing if everybody does it.
I can add more to it, right? It's kind of like leaning your seat back at an airplane. If you lean your seat back, the passenger next to you have less room, they will lean their seat back too, and then the last person just gets screwed, right? And why it sucks, right? Why it sucks today is just that the block contains two things: consensus information and execution information, right? So missing the execution information, so be it, right? But missing the consensus information kind of sucks because people are using consensus information for what is said, people are using consensus information for your economic security budget, right? So we kind of need to decouple those two, but we can get more into later.
Cool. So let's think about rationality versus honesty, right? Is it rational to play MEV timing games, or should we all just be honest? What do you guys think about that?
So usually the definition of rationality is defined as doing what's locally within your interest, and within the context of you as yourself optimizing for your own economic situation. The reason why people are doing this is because they're rational, and because they realize they're going to make more money, they're going to get a higher APY if they play these timing games, and there's a negative externality that's associated with it. It's the oldest story in history, is that somebody doing something like polluting, it's good for them, it's bad for the world. How do you solve this? I mean, step one is calling out the problem and having an active discussion, and then starting to propose some kind of consensus level change or some kind of change that is going to mitigate this externality. Ironically, that's exactly where flashbots came from originally, was this realization that a lot of people were playing these MEV games in the mempool, through these things called PGAs, priority gas auctions, that were causing these big negative externalities of lots and lots of spam. And this was solved by going and creating this new solution that mitigated the externality. So I suspect that's probably where this is going, and we're in the early phases of getting there.
We're talking about the timing game as a horrible thing, but we have to understand that currently, and I talked about it before, we are incentivizing incentivizing validator not to invest in info. So if I'm not doing a timing game and I'm a validator, it's better for me to run my node in Europe and connect only to relays that are in the US. Why? Because it takes a long time for the gate header to get there, and then I'm going to get a better bit, which is as bad as timing. So we need to find the middle. Okay? We should not look at timing and say this is horrible. We need to find how can we incentivize people or validators that lower their latency to get better reward to improve their UI without changing the time. That I think should be our goal.
Yeah, I think my perspective on this is I'm more of a game theorist. So when we look at this, it's not only rational to participate in timing games, it's actually even stronger. We have this thing called dominant strategy, incentive compatible. And so you can unilaterally deviate and call later and make yourself better off. And of course, as Asim said, make everybody else worse off slightly. And that is even harder to deal with from the mechanism design perspective because it's an even stronger version of rationality. It's rationality that's so strong that it doesn't matter what everybody else does, you want to do it yourself.
So maybe Freddie, like from block community and just institutional in general, is there pressure from that side to capture the higher yield? How are you guys seeing that?
Yeah, there certainly is pressure from the institutional side of things because they know what a basis point is worth, basically. You know, for a retail user, like what is it, 4.1 versus 4.12 or something. You know, they don't care so much. But at scale for the larger bags, obviously, it makes a lot of difference. And there's whole companies being built on arbitraging, 1 or 2 basis points. So yeah, they know and they ask us about it. But that being said, it's also not the only one that they care about. And I think that is important also. Like, I think we get the rational matching with the honesty is the changing incentives, right? And I see a lot of good solutions being discussed and hopefully implemented soon. But yeah, there's also other factors that our institutional customers consider, like compliance, like risk diversification across regions, providers, client diversity, all sorts of things like that. And what Eyal was saying is also investing in infra. Like, we invest very heavily in infra. Our infra is very top notch, and there's some data out there that shows that we have a very consistent early get header calls and things like that. And that's because of our great infra. And that's also important in that we, like, for example, Rated has this validated performance, so validated effectiveness rating, and that's also a metric that shows sort of, let's say, a long-term performance, not just in, the average validator gets a block every, like 3 times per year right now. So that's like peak performance thing. And yes, it is important for the overall rewards, but let's remember that most rewards are from the protocol and attestations, things like that you have to provide every 6 minutes, and you want to be very consistent and have a great performance record on those things as well.
So I'm a little behind the curve here. What would you say are the most promising solutions that are being proposed right now?
Well, I think there's some, and I'm by far not an expert, but I think one of them is like if the relays would enforce some sort of a cutoff time, like if they would say that they don't accept any get header after T+1, that could be a very easy solution, but it requires the relays to collaborate and get on consensus together, and also it pushes the responsibility to them. Then we have something like execution tickets, which would probably solve it on the proposal level, but it might push it over to the builders. And this change is probably, I just saw a talk from Mike about it, that's probably like 2-3 years away because it's a super, protocol intensive work there. And there might be other things in the meantime. I think we have the miss-slot things that Max wants to talk about. So yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so the main trade-off that you're making when you're choosing how long to delay is what is the penalty that I receive if I probabilistically miss the slot. So the more you delay, the more likely you are to miss the slot. It turns out that inadvertently when we implemented 5059, we made a change that made it much less costly to miss a slot. And so right now, even though a block will have about $1,000 in fees in it on average, it only has about $50 of FE to $100 of FE on average. And that means that your opportunity cost for missing a slot is only $100, but for the network, it costs $1,000. And that's a classic misalignment of incentives. So I have a proposal on ETH research. It's 3 paragraphs long. I try to make it as short as possible that people make fun of me for it. But the idea is basically, hey, we introduced this bug when we implemented 5059 that made it too cheap to miss slots. Let's realign it by adding a miss slot penalty, which is proportional to the cost to the network. And precisely what is that? It's just 15 million gas, which is the gas target times the base fee, which is on average what the burn would have been if you had an average size block that you made in that slot.
So I want to talk about Freddie's first suggestion to push it to the relay. So let's.
I didn't suggest.
No. let's be honest. First of all, relays are implementing timing. Okay. So the reason why they want to win, and don't forget, relays are public good, and they are a relay company, including Blockstar, spending thousands of dollars on relay and getting nothing. So to push and ask them now to be the police of that, I don't think it's going to work.
Yeah, I guess like just to elucidate what's actually going on, this was on the Memphis community call. Basically, if you call one of the leading relays, who I will not name names, but you know who you are, they will just wait. They will just keep the channel open and just wait. More time for more bids to come in, and this increases their win rate, especially if they're monetizing based on having a high win rate. This helps them make more money. I think they often have an even more intense incentive to win than validators do because it's a big portion of their revenue.
Yeah, just all of them, not just.
So, okay, this is really interesting because this is kind of a replay of many smaller dramas that have played out in the history of blockchain. Every so often you get into one of these situations where there's a system that was designed to work a certain way, and people realize that, well, actually, like it's probably, people thought it was supposed to work this way, but actually there's this little angle I can take that makes me make a little bit more money. And everybody starts realizing, oh, there's this little angle I can take, whether it's a mining pool getting a little bit more market share, or whether it's spamming transactions in the mempool, or whatever it is, there's always something that's like, look, it's not quite breaking the rules, I'm not destroying the network, I'm not hurting anybody, but I'm just making a little bit more money. And the problem gets a little bit worse, and it gets a little bit worse, and it gets a little bit worse, until it starts to push up against the boundary of what people feel like it's like, we have to talk about this now. This problem has gotten so bad, and it's really starting to affect things, and we have to confront it. And the question is always, 1, do we change the protocol? 2, do we try to enforce this with norms, which basically means yelling at people until they stop, right? And those are kind of your 2 options, is either protocol change or norms. And most of the time, what happens is that you start with norms and you see if that works, which is, if there's no rule in Bitcoin that you can't have a 51% mining pool, and it's hard to even imagine how you would create such a rule, but more or less the way that they don't allow that to happen is by yelling. There's just lots and lots of yelling in Bitcoin. And anytime somebody breaks one of these soft rules, people yell at them. Same thing with a lot of these malicious mining techniques that people know technically can make Bitcoin more unfair, but if you do it, you get yelled at, and that's scary. There are a lot of things like this, and ultimately when a problem gets bad enough, the question is always, norm enforcement, which is more or less the relays do it, and like we point at you and we yell at you. And if that works, then you can't kick the can down the road. But eventually the problem gets bad enough, it has to get solved at the protocol layer. That's like my very high level overview of how I see it. This is a class of those kinds of problems.
Right, and I totally agree, and that's what makes me optimistic about blockchain and the Ethereum space in particular, because I know we'll find a solution. There's already a couple of different solutions out there, and we could try them out one after another in orders of complexity, protocol changes, because we also want to keep the protocol simple. I'm sure you agree. So that's great, and it makes the whole thing more resilient. in the end, right? And that we are addressing those things one after another when they come up. So as long as none of this, is catastrophic right from the start, which obviously we should watch out for. But I think we'll get there eventually. Like the drama is big, like it's a local maxima drama for the time or the particular niche of the ecosystem and the players in it. But overall, it's not like we're in any grave danger, I think, personally.
So as a client dev, I can guarantee you, if we knew timing game 4 years ago, the protocol would be very different as of today, right? So like we can we can blame like the passengers like in better seat, but you have to ask like, why is the airplane designed this way in the first place, right? You don't want having flight attendants like basically tell people to like, oh, you should put your seat back like before landing. That's just annoying, right? So the protocol has to be better. So I'm kind of in the camp that we should address this on protocol level, like as fast as possible too, and then try to use less of the social norm.
Yeah, I think from an econ perspective, when you have a social norm, it's easier to enforce when there's an on-off switch that is clearly visible to everybody. Like, for example, if you wanted to enforce a social norm that everybody should wear like green on St. Patrick's Day, that's like a yes or a no. There's no like, oh, I'm wearing taupe, so like, or I'm wearing teal, so like I'm almost there. Like that doesn't really happen, right? Here we have a situation where there isn't such a thing as timing game that just happens. Like you already have delays randomly. You might be calling a relay that's delaying. It's very hard to tell if somebody's playing timing games by actually just delaying it on the client side or on the relay side. So when those norms happen, it's very hard to set a hard line in the sand and enforce it. And actually, I think this is true with Bitcoin because we've seen basically every mining pool engage in selfish mining because it's a continuum of selfish mining. You can delay a little bit, you can delay slightly more, and then eventually the norm gets eroded and there's no way to enforce it anymore.
So I would say two things. We are allowing builders, we're allowing searchers to front-run users and get them to lose 99% of their money, and this is okay, and nobody is yelling, nobody is complaining, and we are coming and saying to somebody, don't delay your block by your getter by 300 milliseconds and make a little bit of money. I don't think so. Second thing, in Ethereum there is more drama and yelling than Bitcoin.
I don't know if that's quite true, but depends on what pockets of Bitcoin you like.
Yeah. Sorry, one more thought on this. I really don't think it's the end of the world. Like, if you thought about, I think the analog of this in Bitcoin is selfish mining. Proof of work system is selfish mining. It's very similar where you delay the announcement of your block. If we knew about it, I don't think we would have said, okay, let's not build Bitcoin. And I think it's the same case here. We're going to have slightly more missed slots. We're going to have slightly more consensus and stability. But the world is going to keep on turning. And we're going to keep on having finality and liveness. So I think it does get a little bit overblown. I agree with you, Gail. It's just kind of like, oh my God, timing games, they're delayed by 100 milliseconds. Like, let's go after them on pitchforks. I think it's really not the end of the world, but it is not a great thing.
And we have a solution to eliminate it. So everyone should buy Blockstart, buy Gateway. The money is over, by the way.
Yeah, so maybe let's chat a bit about how do we actually evaluate the negative externalities of timing games, right? There's uproar about it, and people, like I mentioned now, on the social layer, but can we quantitatively actually measure that and say, yes, it will be this bad for Ethereum? What are your thoughts on that?
So the challenge with that is that it's very hard to know whether a missed slot that is caused because of a delay is caused by a validator or a relay delaying too much or just because of bad infrastructure. So that's the big challenge. If we, there was a very good analysis done, which I showed in my presentation, where they showed that if we're looking on average for enough slot, we can identify whether it's a bad infrastructure or if it's on purpose. then I think that there is a way to quantify it. But other than that, it's very hard, and many times we are going to get it to the wrong.
The interesting thing is that the timing games actually put a price on latency, and in particular on how fast you are, and also what your jitter is, what your dispersion is. And so what we've seen in both the Chorus 1 report and in the P2P report, and I think also in the case of blocks around ultrasound, is because there's money on the table to get better and faster, people have done it. And so it's not actually clear whether these things have caused many missed slots yet, because people realize, hey, if we delay 1 second later, we can make more money, so let's put some time and investment into making our jitter lower so that we can do that without missing more slots. I don't think that's going to hold forever, but like it's certainly the first sort of effect that we've seen so far.
Cool. So then at what point does this become a protocol level change versus we just shouting at people on Twitter the whole time? How bad does it need to become before we address this?
I think it's already like there are other things. So my proposal, which is to increase the penalty for the slot, fixes a couple of other things, including like the problems with optimistic relays missing slots. And I think there's people are pretty mad about the optimistic relays missing slots after ultrasound the other day, or wait, was it was blocks? Sorry. No, but I mean it's happened on both of them. Slots. So I think there's actually enough consensus already to move forward to change like that because it solves a number of problems. And it's more of like a simple parameter change that aligns incentives in the way that we think they should be aligned.
Yeah, I think I'm supportive of the changes, speaking for myself and my team. But like, I think one thing to decide on whether it's like you penalize them for the gas at that time, or you penalize them as the fixed amount based on some consensus layer penalty. Because at the same time, right, we have always marketed ourselves to be very like solo staker friendly, that you can be offline 30% of the time and still be profitable, right? But then imagine now you're a solo staker that you run on Raspberry Pi, and for some reason there was a huge spike of MEV, and then you didn't do anything wrong. You kind of miss the slot because your internet goes offline, and now you're penalized by a lot of that. So that's something to consider, but I can see the trade-off on both sides.
Yeah, I love my solo stakers, but guys, like, you gotta get it together, okay? You gotta be missing 30% of your blocks, okay? Please just get it together so we can all be happy.
Cool. So maybe you can chat a bit about your guys' product that you built to address this. Why does that sort of solve this issue, and why should people consider it?
So the idea is, if you're investing in latency and you get a gain, you get an advantage, you need to make sure that whoever is utilizing it is not losing money. So the concept here is, let's get the relay very close to the proposer. Let's, instead of the proposer, get bits from the relay, where you're paying latency twice because it's a bidirectional request. Constantly push bits from the relay from the MEV relay, from ultrasound, from max profit, to the component that is very close to the proposer. And then the proposer, when it's going to request the get header, the proposer can request the get header without any delay. But that component, which is local to the proposer, can do some delay. Okay, 200, 300, 400 milliseconds, making sure that because bids are so fast arriving to the proposer actually not losing money because of it, releasing the bids to the proposer before the timeout, so we're basically not doing any timing game, we're just making sure that the proposer is getting more. So that's the first thing. By doing that, we are also, as part of it, we're actually improving the attestation, so that's a completely new product as part of that Validator gateway. The attestation manager allow the proposer to get more from the consensus. And the third thing is allow the payload, the block, to be propagated using blocks of BDN, the network, from the MEV relay or from that component, depending on the proposal, if it's trusted or not, through the VDN, which propagate anywhere in the world very fast. So we are definitely reducing the risk of mislog without hurting the proposal. Proposal based on the proof of concept that we did for 3 weeks, 5 to 7% increase.
And I think that last part is particularly interesting after the Denkun fork, because then we have the blobs also to propagate, which will dramatically change, the amount of data that needs to be transferred. And for that, it's even more important to push that and have a great infrastructure to propagate that quickly. That being said, I think that the whole Denkun thing with MEV has another problem, that maybe the builders are going to ignore the blobs if they don't pay enough. So they, it never stops. Once you go down the rabbit hole of these things, then there's all sorts of things. But yeah, we're working with Blockshot, and it looks very promising. And I'm personally very, positive about that block propagation, because I think that will, hopefully these other people that are playing the timing games will notice the change and maybe scale back a little bit, because otherwise we will see more missed slots. And the problem will become a little bit more serious, maybe. So yeah, I think that's a great way to do that.
Cool. So, would you guys say all in all, this is pretty much a short-term problem that can be solved? Or do you think it's just going to remain until there's a protocol level change?
I think it's going to remain until there's a protocol level change, and I think it's not great because we're trying to enforce it through social consensus. And what that means is places like places that are honest, that want the best for the network, are getting penalized, while the places that are dishonest, that are profit maximizing, are stealing their money. And I think that's like the biggest argument for making this into a protocol change, is that whenever you have a system, like for example, you have a test where people can cheat on the test, and there's no penalties for that, the people are going to cheat on the test and they're going to do better, and the people who are honest are going to do worse. I don't think we want that anymore.
Agreed, but any change, I just make a prediction, is going to lead to some other games where, another weakness is found or something. Like, we can't foresee everything. And I mean, you guys are doing great work, and I could not do all of this. And whenever I see the formulas, I pass out, basically. But we will see, and we have seen, and we will see more other games, and that, we'll then need to deal with that, and we just have to accept that, and maybe also frame it in a positive way, that it gets us ahead, like it makes the system overall better.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you, but that is, in a way, the sort of the cycle of samsara when it comes to protocol development, is that you fix one thing, and then you realize, oh shit, there's like these timing games, and oh, there's MEV games, and there's this, and there's that, and like, there will always be the next thing that you need to worry about. The great thing, as we have emphasized a few times, is that like this is not that big of a problem. We've had much bigger problems in the past to deal with, and so on some level, the rapidity of the response and the seriousness of the response will be in accordance to how bad the problem is, which means that it may take some time. There'll probably be a bit of bubbling, at least some infighting, whatever. But if it was like, oh my God, code red, there's no blocks getting finalized, and like we've chopped TPS in half or something, then like there would be a very quick response, and I think the seriousness would be responsive to the level of the problem. So on some level, I agree with you, but I think this is part of the beauty of blockchains, is that we come out in public, we iterate, we get on panels, we argue, and then we propose something that ends up becoming protocol change. It is funny how, despite the fact that game theory ostensibly is supposed to be this very dry, mathematical, academic enterprise, the word honesty, which is very often used in game theory, kind of almost it shades this moral overtone to everything that's happening, is that these people are honest and good, and these people are bad and evil, and in reality, the whole premise of blockchain is that people are going to do what people are going to do. And the point of the blockchain is to make it so that what the people are going to do is the right thing for the protocol. And at the end of the day, that's why we try to push as little as possible to social consensus and make as much happen in the protocol layer so that even greedy, shitty, immoral people do the right thing, such as myself.
Yeah, so my view is timing games. Okay, it's going to stay with us. Right now, without a protocol level change, there is a push from, if we are talking about 4 seconds, from 0, let's push the envelope, find out what's the cutoff that we can still win blocks without missing slot, and if we miss a slot, it's not a big deal. That's what we are seeing right now. That's why we are seeing it moves to 2.5, 3 seconds, and it will continue. A protocol level change will basically going to move it a little bit to the left. There will still be timing again, but people will be a lot more cautious. And instead of doing 2.5 seconds, then maybe we'll do 1 second, 1.5 second. And so I think it's fine. And the last thing is, anyone that is doing timing again is still honest. This is not a bad thing. This is just, I'm trying to maximize my profit. It's not, I'm evil and I want to do something really bad.
Yeah, I agree. But so why do people push back against it? Like, what's the initial outcry?
I think it's that, look, at bottom, blockchains are religions. Blockchains are always and forever religions. And any religion is always about what do you know in your heart that you're doing to hurt God. And God is Ethereum and liveness. And so if you know deep down you're secretly hurting Ethereum liveness, then you're sinful and you're going to be punished by Vitalik and some degrees or something. And the reality is that the reason why we have that, the reason why we have the overtone of religion, is that it's not self-enforcing. You don't need a religion to drink water. No religion tells you it's very important every day drink 3 cups of water. People just do it. They don't need fucking religion to tell them that. So in the same way, the religiosity, the sort of overture that we put on top of Ethereum is around the things that are not already in your self-interest. Such as, it's very important to have solo stakers, right? Why? Even though there are economies of scale to staking, because we have this broader thing and blah, blah, blah. It's like anything that you see that is Ethereum dogma is there because it's not already being enforced by the protocol incentives.
Yeah, agreed. So I think we can wrap it up there. Maybe let's give some time for questions from the crowd. Does anybody have any specific questions? What?
What was that?
How to add delay?
How do you delay?
How to add that time delay?
How do you add a time delay?
Is this an info hazard to share? You need to in the default implementation of your consensus client or whatever your Metcalf client, there's a certain time at which you call the relay, and you need to sleep for a few hundred milliseconds before you do that.
But I guess I have a question. Wouldn't the relay just does it for you already? If today you're happily you're doing the right thing, then as we heard from earlier, that relay are actually delaying block as well, right? So assuming that you're just honest validator, but I don't know if today you're honest or it's because of relay that you're delaying block. So I think those two are getting kind of mixed right now.
Yeah, true, but it's you're buying a product and you're sort of maybe pay attention or not, whether that's an organic food product or if there's child labor involved or something like that. So yeah, you don't know, but I also think it should not make you completely ignore. When you buy the cheapest clothing, you're just guaranteed to know that there's some bad things happening along the supply chain. So it's I wouldn't say that completely takes away your responsibility as a proposer. But at the same time, we have to acknowledge that everyone in the supply chain has to do its part, basically, or should play, not lean back too much if we're staying this airline analogy there.
Yeah, I think also the relay only has so much leeway because will time out your relay request, your default client implementation will time out the relay request and submit the block if it doesn't hear back after a certain time. I'm not an expert on implementation here, but you can give yourself more time if you also delay your client.
All right, anyone else? Cool. I think that wraps up the panel. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having us.